It's time now to build the second slide in our presentation. And the slide that we're going to build is a Meet the Team slide. Now, a couple of things I need to consider before building this slide. I need to decide if I want to have the background exactly the same on each slide or if I want to switch that up. And I also need to think about the format of this Meet the Team slide. Do I want to show everybody who works at the company, or do I just want to show the high-level managers? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to add 3 people, the 3 managers, to our Meet the Team slide. And in this first lesson, I want to show you some of the techniques that I use for duplicating and reformatting existing slides in the presentation. Now, you might be thinking, what does she mean by that? Well, Slide 1 pretty much contains a lot of the features that I want to use in my Meet the Team slide, but I do want to make some minor changes. For example, I don't want it to say Explore on my Meet the Team slide, I want it to say Team instead. I also want to switch out this background image, so I no longer want this landscape image, I want something that represents the team a bit better. And of course, also I need to switch out the text. Now, I could start from a blank slide again, but in general, I don't tend to do that. What I do is I duplicate the slide and then I just switch out the elements that I don't want for the elements that I do want on the new slide. So let's take a look at how we do this. Now I'm going to zoom in a little bit and we're going to just simply delete slide 2 because we don't need that. And the first thing I'm going to do is duplicate slide 1. So let's select it in the slides pane and Control D to duplicate. Now the first thing that I want to change here is the background image that's in use. And I've already saved off an image from Pexels, which you can find in the course files folder if you want to follow along with me. Now this landscape image is right at the back. So in order to get to it, it's going to prove quite difficult because I have lots of other objects stacked on top. So again, this is where our selection pane can be really helpful. So let's jump up to Shape Format and turn on our selection pane. And what I'm basically going to do here is hide everything that's currently on top of this background image. So I pretty much want to hide most things on this slide except that image in the background. So now I can get to it, I can select that image. Now what I want to do here is simply switch out this image for an alternate one. So what we can do is click on the image, go up to Picture Format, and in the Adjust group, notice that we have a Change Picture option. And we can choose to select an image from a file, from stock images, online, or from the icons library. Now, I've already saved off an image from the Pexels website, so I'm going to choose from file. And there is the image that I want to use, team background. Let's click on Insert. So very quickly, I've just managed to switch out that current picture. I haven't had to insert a new one and delete the old one. Now this image currently doesn't look exactly as I want it to look because it's slightly off center and we have quite a lot of space over on one side. So we're going to use our crop and fill technique again. Up to Picture Format, into Crop, and we're going to choose Fill. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this image a bit larger by dragging these resize handles in the corner. So we can pull this all the way out and then just move it around until we get it exactly in the position that we want. And I think I want this to be about there. Once we're happy, we can click the top half of the crop button to set that image. So really nice and simple. Let's see what this looks like with the green transparent overlay over the top. We're going to go to our selection pane and unhide transparent shape overlay. And you can see the effect that I'm getting there. Now, it might be at this stage that I think, actually, I want to change the color. I don't want to have this green color throughout the presentation. So once again, we can right-click, go into Format Shape, and we can choose a different color. So let's take a look at some of these. That's not too bad. What about if we go for a lighter one? What does that look like? That's not too bad either. I might want to take that transparency down or up. I'm not too keen on the white, so let's go for a darker color. And I think we'll go with that. Let's close down our Format Shape pane. Let's bring back our footer and our company logo and our merged heading shape and see what that looks like. Well, it doesn't look too bad, but I don't think there's enough contrast between the header and footer and the actual background. So let's just make another minor adjustment. Let's go into Format Shape, and we're going to choose a slightly darker black. Now, I think that looks a little bit better. Let's check what this looks like and unhide all of the other objects. And I think that looks pretty good. Now, the other thing that I want to do here is I want to switch out the text where it says Explore for the word team. So once again, I'm going to hide the subtitle and the title so that I can work on this Explore text. And this is just a simple case of selecting the text and replacing the word with team. Now, it might be that you need to adjust this a little bit, so I'm going to take this in because it is a slightly shorter word, and we're going to move it over and try and get that in the center. And this is where your alignment guides can come in quite handy. So you can see I've got that red alignment guide to tell me that that's in the center, and I can start to move it up and down until I see the other alignment guide, and I know that that's exactly in the center of the slide. Now let's unhide the subtitle and the title text, because what I actually want here is I want a heading that says Meet the Team, but I don't need a subheading. So for this, I'm going to select Subtitle text box and simply press the Delete key. And for this text box, we're going to change the alignment to left align, and we're going to change the title just to say Meet the Team. Now, this is a little bit too large, so let's take that font size down. I'm going to use my decrease font size button just here. Remember, there is a shortcut key for that of Control Shift left arrow. So let's take it down a few points, and then we can drag that into place. Now, because this is on the left, I can resize the text box to make that a bit easier to do. And I'm going to place that, let's just put that somewhere around there. So with just a few different techniques, you can see there how it's really simple to duplicate a slide and then reformat that slide by switching out the picture, changing the text, and using the selection pane to manage all of your objects. So now we have the background of this Meet the Team slide done, it's time to add our 3 team members. And this is where we get a chance to practice filling shapes again, but you're going to see a couple more editing techniques. Now I'm going to leave my selection pane open on the right hand side because we're going to be adding new objects to this slide, so I'm going to want to rename them. And this is something in general that I tend to do. I always have that selection pane open and I rename my objects as I go so that I'm not faced with 40 or 50 objects to rename at the end of the presentation. Now the 3 images that I'm going to use for staff members are again downloaded from the Pexels website. You can choose your own images if you want to, or alternatively, you'll find these images in the course files folder for this section. Now I want each image to be contained within a circle. So the first thing we need to do here is insert 3 circles. So let's go to Shapes, let's choose our oval. We want to hold down Shift and then draw a circle. And I'm going to make these reasonably large. Let's make them about that size. Now I want 2 more of these, so let's duplicate the object, Control D, Control D. And now I want to align these on the slide. So let's select them all, hold down Shift and select all of our objects up to the Shape Format tab, and we're going to use our alignment tools again. As I said, you'll be using these all the time. Now the first thing I'm going to do here is say Align Middle, and there was a very slight movement there. Let's also make sure that we distribute them horizontally so that we have equal spacing in between our objects. I'm now going to group them all together, Control G, and then go back to Align and align them to the center as a group. So now I need to ungroup these objects because I want to work on them individually. Control Shift G to ungroup. Now notice, because I've added these 3 circles, I now have 3 new objects in the selection pane: Oval 2, Oval 10 and Oval 11. And once we've filled these with images, I'm going to rename them to the team member's name to make them easy to identify. So let's fill our first shape. We're going to click on it, right click and go into Format Shape. We're going to fill this shape with a picture. Remember, it will always insert the last image that you used. We're going to switch this out for a picture that we have saved in our course files folder. So let's click on Insert, From a File, and these are the images I'm going to use. Because this is a fun, cool travel company, we've got images that aren't necessarily business images, but they do convey the kind of vibe that we're going for here. So let's add Noah first of all. Now notice what I mean. When you insert a picture, it's kind of cutting off his head. It's also slightly distorted. He's sort of stretched out a little bit. So once again, we're going to use our crop and fill technique. So up to the picture format ribbon, into crop, and we're going to choose fill. Now I want to move him down a little bit, but I also want to make him a little bit bigger so he's a bit closer to the camera. So let's just drag that out to resize and then reposition. And I will say, when you're doing things like this, you do want to make sure that all of your images are pretty consistent with regards to how far away they are from the camera effectively. You don't want somebody who's super tiny and really far away, and then other people who are fairly close. So we're going to make all of these roughly the same size. Now notice that when I'm dragging this, you might see that the circle looks a little bit pixelated around the outline. And that's simply because I'm zoomed out to 70% at the moment. If I zoom back into 100%, then that's going to be a smooth line. Now once you've positioned him, we just want to click the top half of the crop button. And I can see that I have a very slight outline around the outside. Now, if we go up to Shape Format and into Shape Outline, I could choose to turn off that outline, or maybe I want to add a white border. And yeah, I think I'm going to do that. Let's just add a nice white border. So now we have a perfectly cropped image. Let's do the same for the other two team members. Let's click on the circle, into Picture or Texture Fill, Insert, From a File, and this time we're going to insert Lucy Saunders. So this image does need a little bit of work. It's distorted and we can't really see her. So up to Picture Format, into Crop, down to Fill. That's a little bit better, but we want to make her bigger so she's the same distance away from the camera as Noah. So let's drag our resize handles out and make her a lot bigger. So I think she needs to go a little bit bigger here. Let's drag it over, and I think even slightly bigger. There we go, that's much better. Let's click the crop button. Let's now just add the final team member. We're going to go back to Picture or Texture Fill, Insert, From a File, and the last person here is Elijah. Now notice with this image there are two people in this picture, but only Elijah works for this company. So we're going to need to make sure that we crop out his friend here. So let's click on Insert, and I'm going to close down the Format Picture pane. We're going to go to the Picture Format tab, Crop and Fill. And we're going to move him over so that we can't see this girl, and we need to make him a little bit bigger as well. So there we go, that's kind of what I'm looking for, and click on Crop. So now that I have my three team members, I'm going to rename the objects in the selection pane. So where we have Oval 2, I'm going to switch this out, and this is going to say Noah Hardy. The next one is going to say Lucy Saunders. And then finally we have Elijah Bloom. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at how we can copy formatting from one object to another using Format Painter. And it's worth noting that Format Painter is available throughout all of the Microsoft applications, not just PowerPoint. And what it allows you to do is quickly copy just the formatting properties that you've applied to an object to another object on your slide. So let's take a look at how it works, and then let's take a look at one of its major drawbacks. Now you're going to find your Format Painter on the Home ribbon in the Clipboard group. And it's this little icon just here, Format Painter. Now, before we use this, what we're going to do is on our Meet the Team slide, we're going to add the team member's name and also their job title underneath. So for this, we need to insert a text box. So let's grab that tool. Let's draw a text box underneath, and we're going to type his name, which is Noah Hardy. Now, I need to apply some formatting to this to make it consistent with the look and feel of my slides. So the first thing I'm going to do is change the font to Lato, and we're going to make it white. Now, I'm reasonably happy with that font size, but I am going to make it bold as well. Now, let's drag this text box in, and then I'm just going to position this in the middle of his picture. Notice my smart guide comes up to help me there. Now, I want to use the same formatting for the other two people. Now, what I could do here is duplicate this text box and just switch out the name, or I could use my Format Painter. And I will say in this instance, Format Painter is probably a little bit of a longer way of doing this, but just so you can get an idea as to how it works, because it is super useful in many situations. So let's jump up here and insert another text box. I'm going to draw it, and we're just going to add her name, which is Lucy Saunders. Now, what I'm going to do is use Format Painter to copy the formatting that we applied to Noah Hardy's text box. So let's select the text box. Let's jump up to the Home ribbon and choose Format Painter. Notice that my cursor has now changed to a little paintbrush icon, and I can simply swipe it over Lucy Saunders, and it's going to apply those same formatting properties. Once again, I can just resize this text box and then move that into the middle and try and make sure that that's aligned in the center. And you can see I've got my smart guides which help me align it not only with the center of the picture, but also with the other label that says Noah Hardy. Let's do the final one. So we're going to insert another text box. Let's just draw this over here. And this guy's name is Elijah Bloom. Once again, I'm going to select the Lucy Saunders text box and click on Format Painter and swipe that over his name. Let's drag this out so it's on one line, and again we can just align this with the other text labels and also with the center of this picture. Now I'm going to use a similar technique to add 3 more text boxes which are going to contain the job titles of all 3 of these people. So I'm going to do that off camera. I'm going to use exactly the same technique. Join me back here in a couple of moments when I've done that. So now we've used Format Painter to copy that formatting across to all of the other labels. Also notice that in the selection pane, I've given each of these new items that we've added a meaningful name. Now, another thing I'd probably do at this stage is group together the team member's name and also their job title, because this just means I can move them as a block as opposed to 2 separate objects. So let's select both of the text boxes, Control G to group. I'm just going to do the same for the others, Control G and Control G. Now notice in the selection pane what happens as soon as I do that. Notice that it's added in all 3 of these groups and it tells me what's contained within those groups. And of course, as you might expect, you can also rename your group labels as well. So I'm going to double click up here and we're just going to call this Elijah Bloom Info. We'll change this one and we'll change the final one. Now there's one important point to note about the Format Painter, and you might have noticed this already. You can only use it once. Now just for this example, I'm going to make a duplicate of the slide title. So Control D to duplicate that text box. Now I'm going to change the color of the text to a light green. Now if I want to copy this formatting across to the other Meet the Team, I can select my text, click the Format Painter, and then paint it across. Now I'm going to undo for a moment and we're going to make another duplicate so that we have 3 of them. And let's use our Format Painter again. Let's select, click Format Painter, swipe it across the first one, but notice that when I go to swipe it across the second one, the Format Painter has deactivated. So it can only be used once if you click on Format Painter once. The secret here, if you want to do a lot of format painting, is to double click on the icon. So let's do it again. Let's select our text, but this time we're going to double click on the Format Painter. Now I can swipe it here and the Format Painter stays active and I can just carry on painting that format. To deactivate it, you can press the Escape key on your keyboard or simply click on the Format Painter button again. So just be aware of that. If you click it once, you can only use it once. If you click it twice, then you can use it multiple times. Now I want to change this back because I don't want this to be in green. I want it to be in white. Now it is worth noting that Format Painter doesn't work in all situations. So let me show you an example. If you recall, when we added Noah's picture onto this slide, we chose to have a very thin white outline around the outside of his picture. Now we didn't apply this outline to Lucy and Elijah. Now it might be that I want to add a little bit more formatting to this picture. Let's go up to Picture Format and we're going to go into Picture Effects, and I think I'm going to add a glow. And notice I have lots of different variations of glows. I can change the thickness, but these can look really effective. And I think this is one of those situations where this looks pretty good. Now, this green glow color isn't the exact color that I'm using in this slide. So if I want to get the exact color, I can go to More Glow Options and use that eyedropper utility again. I can then pick up the color and then the glow is going to be the exact same color. Now you might think that you can use your Format Painter to copy the outline and the glow to these other pictures. But let's see what happens when we do that. I'm going to select the picture. We're going to click on Format Painter. Once we get our paintbrush, we're going to click on Lucy's picture. Check out what happens. It also changes the photo. Now this can easily be fixed. We have two options here. We can either use Format Painter to apply all of the formatting, and then we can simply go into Format Picture and just re-add Lucy's picture. Or alternatively, if we just Control Z out of there, you can simply just manually apply those settings. So that is a little bit of a pain and something to watch out for. So let's go in and manually apply these settings. Now we can apply formatting to multiple images at the same time. So if we select both Lucy and Elijah by holding down the Shift key, we can jump up to Picture Format and add a picture border. And then into Picture Effects, we can go to Glow, More Glow Colors. We're going to use our eyedropper and select that green. So just be aware of that when you're using Format Painter. It's great for some things, but doesn't work for others. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at some of the basics surrounding bulleted lists, numbered lists, and paragraph text. Because again, these are things that you'll find yourself adding to slides all of the time. Now, let's start out by just having a little practice on a new slide. Now, if we click the new slide drop down, if you recall, when we add something like a title and content slide, notice that we get a placeholder to add a title, but we also get the option to add some bulleted text. So let's just call this slide 3. It's just a little practice. And now I can start adding in my bulleted items. So I'm just going to say heading 1. As soon as I hit enter, I get my second bullet point. And it's going to carry on going. Now what you can also do with bullet points is you can have sub-bullets. And the quickest way to add a sub-bullet or a sub-heading is to press the Tab key on your keyboard, which is going to indent. So let's say subheading 3, and it's going to carry on at that level until you choose to come out of it. So if I now want to promote back up to a heading level, I can press Shift Tab and that will take me back a level, and I can now type in heading 4. Now I tend to do these using keyboard shortcuts, but if you prefer to use commands on the ribbon, if you take a look at the home ribbon in the paragraph group, this is where you find your bulleted lists. Now, the default for bulleted lists are these kind of filled round bullets. But notice that we do have other options here. So you can see as I hover over them, we get the live preview in the slide. So we could have these little small square ones. I do tend to use those occasionally. Ones which kind of look a bit like checkboxes. We have slightly fancier ones, little arrows, and also ticks. We also have further options underneath bullets and numbering. Now this is where we can come if you want to do things like adjust the size of the bullet. So by default, when you add a bullet, it's going to be 100% of the text size. But I could take this down to, let's say, 50%. Now if I click on OK, you can see that that's drastically going to change the size of those bullets. So if you feel like a smaller or a larger bullet is going to be more in keeping with your text on your slide, you can definitely modify that in there. Now I'm going to put mine back up to 100. We can also choose the color of our bullet. So maybe I decide that I want these to be green. Notice that they all change in the preview window. And maybe I think to myself, actually, I also want to use these square bullets. I can select it from here and click on OK, and those changes are going to update. Let's go back into bullets, because what we can also do is use a picture as a bullet. And you can see here we can choose a picture from a file, stock images, online pictures, or icons. Now simply to demonstrate this, I'm going to choose from the icons library. And you can see it opens up the icons that we have available in PowerPoint. Now this is a travel presentation, so I think I'm going to use this little plane icon. Let's click on Insert. And now I have those as my bullets. So you can really add a little bit of interest by customizing your bullet points. Let's jump back into bullets and numbering. The final button that we have here is the Customize button. And this is basically going to open up the symbols gallery. And in this symbols gallery, we have a whole host of different symbols that we could possibly use as a bullet. And I find that in general, if you're looking for some sort of mini pictures, if you go to Wingdings or Webdings, I think it is, there it is, Webdings, you have little images here that you might want to use. So let's choose, I'm just going to go for this one just here, click on OK. Maybe I want these to be orange instead. And there I get my bullet. So lots of leeway there to really customize how your bullets look. And in general, you use bullets when you are displaying a list of items on your slide. Now, I will say that over the last few years, I've really noticed a move away from using bullet points in slides. And an example I would give is if you look at something like presentations that Apple give or presentations that Microsoft give at their global events. Notice that they do use a slide deck, but they never use bullet points in their slides. So that gives you an idea as to how the world of modern PowerPoint design is going. We're moving away from this kind of standard looking slide, and that includes bullet points, to a more modern, slick look. But there is still a place for bullet points. I still find myself using them occasionally, so it's good to know where to go in order to completely customize them. Now it's also worth noting that you don't just have two levels of bullets. If I click at the end of the subheading and press the tab key, I get another level and I can carry on going. So it really depends how many levels you want to have in your bulleted list. So I'm going to select all of these headings and let's remove the bullets. I'm going to say none, because what I could choose to do instead is turn this into a numbered list. So if instead of bullets I want to have 1, 2, 3, I can definitely do that. And you can see how that affects what we have underneath. Now if I select this one, for example, and once again we have different options for customizing our numbered lists. We have the same options here. We can change the size and the color, but we can also choose what we want to start at. So maybe you don't want your bulleted list to start at 1 or at A. You can specify that in here, and you can see as I move up how that affects what we're looking at. So just be aware of that as well. So that is how bullets and numbering work. Now, what about paragraphs of text as opposed to bullet points? Well, let's delete out everything that we have in here, and let's add a couple of paragraphs of text. Now, I don't want to think of anything, so I'm going to use a little trainer's trick to quickly insert some paragraphs of text into a PowerPoint slide. And this also works if you want to quickly insert paragraphs of text in Word documents as well. We can type in equals lorem, and then we can specify how many paragraphs we want. So I'm going to say 3, and how many lines we want in each of those paragraphs. So let's say 4 lines. Close the bracket, hit enter, and it generates me some text. Now, when you're dealing with text on a slide, I always advise people to try and keep text to a minimum. And this is really where PowerPoint gets used in an incorrect way in a lot of presentations you might see. I find a lot of people cramming a lot of text, pretty much everything they want to say, onto the slide, and then basically just reading off of the slide as they present their ideas. PowerPoint should really just be there to help you. When you're presenting content to an audience, you should be the main focus of attention. The audience should be listening to what you're saying and not having to also read lots of paragraphs of text on a slide. The human brain can't cope with that scenario very well and listen and read at the same time. So keep text to a minimum. But there will be situations where you need to add text to your slide. And we would always recommend for paragraph text that you don't go smaller than size 24. Now, the size I'm currently using is size 28. I want to change this to Lato font, and I think I'm actually going to take that down to 24. So I wouldn't go any smaller than this. Now, there are a few paragraph options that we have when dealing with text like this. Now, if we go up to the paragraph group on the home ribbon, notice that currently all of my text is aligned to the left. But I could align it to the middle within that text box, align it to the right, or I could choose to use justify. Now, if you're not sure what that is, let's take a look at the screen tip. It says it's going to distribute your text evenly between the margins. Justified text gives your document clean, crisp edges so it looks more polished. And an example I would give of this is newspaper text. Any text that you see in a newspaper is always in justified format because it greatly aids readability. Now, a couple of other things we can do here is we can choose to add or remove columns. So if I decide that I want to split this text into 2 different columns, I can choose 2 columns. And it's going to move that across. Now, it doesn't do it in a particularly nice way. So what I would probably do is go into more columns and then adjust the spacing in between, because currently it says 0. So we're going to take that up to, let's take it up to 1 inch, click on OK, and that looks slightly better. So you can split into 2 or more columns. Now, I'm actually going to undo that to take it back to how it was. The final little option that we have in here in relation to paragraphs is line spacing. So this is where you can control how much space you have in between each line. So if I take this all the way up to 2.5, you can see how that works. We go back down to 2, 1.5, and 1. And then at the bottom here, you have more line spacing options where you can really get quite granular about how that text looks. You can choose if you want any indentation before the first line. So if I take that up to 0.6 and click on OK, you can see it's going to indent that. Let's go back into line spacing. I'm going to take that back down to 0. I could choose to have a first line indent instead. So if I select first line, and then I'm going to leave that on 0.5, check out how that changes things. The first line of each paragraph is just indented by 0.5. Let's go back into line spacing options. I could have a hanging indent instead, which on this text doesn't really do a great deal. And finally, we can choose if we want to have spacing before or spacing after. Now, a situation where I might use this is if you take a look at my paragraphs, you can see that in between the first paragraph, the second paragraph, and the third, we have quite a bit of space in here. So it might be that I want to select the second paragraph and the first, and then adjust the spacing before. So for this, I would go into line spacing options, and I would take the spacing before down to, let's say, I'm going to take that down to 5, and click on OK. And you can see that that moves it up very slightly. So just be aware of those different ways of modifying your line spacing options. But in general, that's pretty much all there is to text. We can resize our text box to move it all around, and we can apply any formatting that we need to specific parts of text. But that's pretty much all there is when it comes to adding text and formatting the paragraphs. So whilst I would recommend that you keep text to a minimum, it's good to know how to add bullets, numbering, and adjust paragraph settings. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at something that's pretty cool. And this is one of those newer features in PowerPoint that's been introduced in the last couple of years. We're going to use something called the morph transition to add an animated effect to our Meet the Team slide. Now, the morph transition is part of the wider transitions group. And if you take a look at your ribbons at the top, you can see that we do have a transitions ribbon. Now, we haven't spoken in any detail at all about transitions, so you might be thinking to yourself, well, what exactly is a transition? Now, we are going to spend an entire lesson taking a look at some of these others, but I guess the simplest way of explaining a transition is it's something that you can apply which really controls how you move between your slides. For example, I could add a fade transition to every slide in my presentation, and then when I run the presentation and move between my slides, I'm going to get a nice fade effect as opposed to just moving onto the next slide. That's basically what a transition is. As I said, we will go into this in a bit more detail, but our focus for this lesson is going to be the brand new morph transition. And if we hover our mouse over it, we can see that we do have a reasonably detailed screen tip. Now, I'm not going to spend any time reading this out because really the best way to understand how morph works is to see it in action. And we're going to use this to create a really nice effect for this Meet the Team slide. Now, effectively, what I want to happen here is, aside from this Meet the Team slide, I want the next slide really just to focus in on Noah, and I want to see a bit of information, a biography on Noah. I then want the next slide to show a biography of Lucy, and the next one to show a biography of Elijah. And using the morph transition, we can create a really cool way of moving between each of these biographies. So let me show you what I mean. Now, in order for the morph transition to work, you need to make sure that you're using a duplicate of the first slide in your morph transition. Now, my first slide is the Meet the Team slide, so I'm going to duplicate this 3 more times because I need a slide for each of the employees. So let's select the slide in the Slides pane and press Ctrl D 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Nice and straightforward. So we're going to go to slide number 3, and what I want to show on this slide is simply just Noah Hardy and then his biography. And I want the other 2 team members, I want their pictures to be a lot smaller down in the corner. So we're going to do a little bit of rearranging just here. So the first thing I want to do here is I want to make Noah a lot bigger. So holding down Shift, I'm going to drag the corner and I'm going to make his picture a lot bigger and just move it down a little bit. I'm then going to grab his label, and I think I'm just going to leave his name underneath. I'm then going to delete Lucy's name and job title, and the same for Elijah. And I'm going to hold down Shift and make her a lot smaller. So let's drag it down, and I want to place her down here. And we're going to do the same for Elijah. We're going to make him the same size as Lucy. Now look, as soon as I drag him in, when he is exactly the same size as another object on the slide, I can see those red guidelines come up. So that's a super useful thing as well. We know it's the same size, and we can put him down here as well. Now, saved off in Word, I have just some biography information for all 3 of these employees. So let's insert a text box. I'm going to make this reasonably large. And now I'm just going to copy and paste the text in from my Word document. So here it is. Let's grab this text, Control C. Let's go back to PowerPoint, Control V to paste. Now we need to do a little bit of formatting here. We want to change the font to Lato, and we also want to make it white. And I think it's a little bit large, so let's take that down, and I'm just going to place that next to him just there. So that is my first slide. And I want to do pretty much the same thing for the other 2 employees. So let's go on to the next slide. This time Noah is going to be a lot smaller. So let's take him down to about there and place him down here. We're going to do the same for Elijah. So let's hold down Shift and drag. And then we can place him down here as well. And then this time we're going to make Lucy a lot bigger. So let's drag her up. Let's put her over here. We're going to delete Noah's information and we're just going to move Lucy's information across. And we're going to do the same thing. So to make this a bit quicker, I'm just going to copy this text box. I'm going to paste it over here and we'll just replace this information with Lucy's information from the Word document. So let's go back to Word. Let's grab her bio, Control C, and let's just paste that in. And again, we need to apply our formatting. So we want this to be Lato font, white, and we want to take that down. And then the final thing to do here is just delete Elijah's labels. Now I'm going to do exactly the same for Elijah. Just to save a bit of time, I'm going to do this off camera, so please join me back here in a couple of moments. So now we have all 3 of those individual team slides. What we're now going to do is apply the morph transition to all 4 of these slides. So let's select slide 2, hold down Control and select slide 3, 4, and 5. Let's jump up to transitions and choose morph. And you kind of get a little preview there as to what this is going to do. So if we now play the slideshow, let's select slide 2 and from the status bar, let's run this slideshow. You get this really cool effect when you move to the next slide. So when I click my mouse, those other 2 minimize and we get to see Noah's information. When I click again, it's going to switch for Lucy. Click again, and it's going to switch for Elijah. So this is a really cool, smooth transition and a really nice way of moving between your slides. It gives a slightly less PowerPointy look and feel and more of an animated video feel. So the morph transition is great for that. The key things to take away when you want to use morph is you must always have your starting slide, duplicate it, make the changes, and then apply the morph transition to all of the slides. It's time now to do exercise 6, where we're going to carry on building our slide deck. And in this exercise, we're going to build a Meet the Team slide. So the first thing I'd like you to do is to delete the slide we added in the previous exercise that contains the aligned shapes. We don't really need that one in the presentation. It was purely there just to practice. So delete that out and then insert a new blank slide. I'd then like you to recreate the Meet the Team slide using the images in the exercise files folder. So let's take a look at what we have on this slide. We have a background image. So again, you'll find that in the exercise files folder. We have 4 rounded rectangle shapes, and I've filled them with images of different employees. And you'll find all of these images in the exercise files folder. I've added their name and their job title underneath, and I've changed some of this text and also this line to that really nice bright blue color. Also notice we have the logo in the bottom corner of this slide as well. And just to help you out, I've just got a little picture here of the color palette so you can see exactly which blue I've been using in case you want to replicate that. So you have everything you need, give that a go, and if you'd like to see my answer, then please keep watching. So the first thing we need to do here is just simply delete out slide number 2, and then we're going to add a new blank slide. So for this Meet the Team slide, we're going to start by adding the background image. So we're going to find that in the exercise files folder, and it's this one here, the city background. Let's click on Insert. We need to do our crop and fill trick to make this the full width of the slide without distorting it. So let's drag those handles out. Let's go for fill, and I think I'm going to drag this down very slightly. Once I've got that correct, let's click the crop button. Now, once again, I need to add a transparent shape overlay over the top. Now, I could draw this, but I'm just going to grab the one we have on the previous slide, Control C to copy, Control V to paste, and then I can simply just drag this out. That in general is a lot quicker. I'm going to do the same for the title as well. So I'm going to grab the title from the previous slide, Control C, and Control V to paste. If you didn't do that and you typed it into a text box, that's absolutely fine. Now I think I'm going to take this size down very slightly. Let's put it up to 60. Now I'm going to change my title so that it says Meet the Team. And I have the word team in that blue font. So let's keep that and just edit the rest. I also need a line underneath the title. So again, I'm all about quickness. Control C to copy from the title slide, Control V to paste that in, and then we can move that into position. And remember, you can readjust this simply by dragging it out. And the other thing we need on here is the logo. So again, let's grab it from the title slide, Control C, Control V to paste. So now I have the background of my slide, I can start to add in my employees. And we want to insert these pictures into rounded rectangles. So let's grab that tool. I'm going to hold down Shift as I drag so that the aspect ratio is maintained. So let's make it about that big, and I'm going to duplicate this 3 more times. 1, 2, 3. Just pressing Control D there. Let's drag these along, and I'm going to use my alignment tools to make sure that these are all aligned with each other and have equal spacing in between. So let's jump up to align. Let's say align middle, and let's distribute horizontally. And I don't want these dead in the center. I'm just going to drag them up very slightly as a group. And I'm going to place them about there. So now I can fill these rounded rectangles with my employee images. Once again, you'll find all of these images in the course files folder. So let's go to Format Shape. We're going to say Picture or Texture Fill, Insert from File, and we want Natalie first of all. We need to do our crop and fill. So Picture Format, Crop and Fill. I'm going to make her slightly bigger. Let's drag her out and reposition her. In fact, I think she can go a bit bigger. Let's go like that and crop. Let's do the same for the next one. This time we want this guy here, Spencer Fry. We want to crop and fill. And I want to make him roughly the same size as Natalie. So I think possibly slightly bigger. That's pretty good. Let's crop. The next one, Picture Fill, Insert from a file. We want Lucas. Let's click Insert, Crop and Fill. Make sure he's also the same size. I think he needs to be slightly bigger. There we go, and crop. And then the final one, Insert from a file. We want Lucinda. And crop and fill. And I think she was actually a pretty good size. I probably didn't really need to do that, but let's place her there and crop. So very straightforward. Now, one thing I do want to do here is I want to change the border around the outside, because what I have in the example image is I have a slightly thicker border in this nice bright blue color. So I'm going to select all of the rounded rectangles. We're going to go to Picture Format, and we're going to add a picture border in this blue color. And I'm going to make that picture border a little bit thicker. So let's go for 2 1/4 points, like so. Now it's a simple case of just adding in their name and their job title. So for this, I'm going to grab the subheading text. Again, if you added text boxes, that's absolutely fine. Control V, and then we can use this and type in their names. So we have Natalie Kwame, and I want to make this a little bit smaller. Let's take that down to 14, drag it in, And then you want to try and align this with the picture above, and I'm going to use just those smart guides that pop up. Now I'm just going to duplicate this text box for the other people and fill in their names. So join me back here in a couple of seconds when I've done that. And there we go. I've simply added some text boxes. We now have their name and also their position underneath, and I've simply changed the color of the font to match the blue color. Remember, when you're changing font color, if we use this for an example, you can use your eyedropper utility if you want to pick up that blue color. So if I go to my font drop down and select eyedropper, I could hover it over where we have the word team and pick up that blue font to change that to exactly the same color. So just remember you have that utility. But for now, this is that slide done. I will see you in the next exercise.